start this. All right, so we'll get started in just another minute or two. We'll let a couple more people find the room. I know that we did have a programming change in terms of the normal day. We are not on our normal day, so we might have some people coming in a little bit late. So in about another minute or two, we will get started on things. And thanks for joining so far, and we'll get things going shortly.
Hi, Steve. How you doing?
Good, Brian. I missed you at Kiwanis meetings.
All right, we're getting things going now. Excellent.
That's okay.
Stephen, are you going to need to share your screen for any reason? Do you have like a presentation or any visuals or anything like that?
I do have a PowerPoint to share
Oh.
if you can see it.
Yeah, excellent. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to at a certain point I'm going to grant you permission to share a screen. Let me see here. I always forget here. There we go. All right, Stephen. So when you're ready, you should be able to share the screen, and we can go ahead and do that now, and then that way it's already up.
Steve, never go by the number that you see on the screen because we record it for that reason. There's a lot of people that do watch it after the fact. And so it's just so you know that.
I
Yeah,
find that full presentations are my best because people can fast forward through the boring part.
There you go. It's just like on demand, right? Everything that we watch is on demand now. You just fast forward and works out good. All right, so we can go ahead and get started. It's 7:03. I'm sure that we'll still have some people coming in a little bit later, but I want to welcome everyone that is with us. My name is Joe Poreka, and I'm the Active Claremont President for 2022. I'm glad you could join us today. Today we have Stephen Llanusa, who's the President of the CUSD School Board, and he'll be providing a presentation with some information about what's going on with the school board and some potential opportunity sites that they have designated. Before we get started into that, though, I just have a couple announcements. We had our trash pickup on Saturday. To another successful trash pickup. If you're ever interested in joining us for a Saturday trash pickup, it is open to everyone, and we'd love to see you. That takes place on the third Saturday of every month at 8 o'clock at St. Luke's Church. We also had a wonderful event. This was, of course, I'm biased though, because the event that we participated in was in conjunction with Claremont CERT, which is Claremont Community Emergency Response Team. And Claremont CERT held their first annual fundraiser car show at Claremont Toyota, and that was last Sunday. And yes, I am biased. I am a car guy through and through, and I loved looking at all the vehicles that were there, but even better was the fact that Active Claremont was there on site. We had our booth set up, we had our table, and we had our banners and shirts out. We were talking to people, and that was the first public event that Active Claremont has been a part of in actually a little over 2 years. So it was very exciting for us, and I have been personally Active Claremont's president since the beginning of 2021, and that was the first public event that I got to experience as the club president. So it was really fun for me to be able to interact in that type of environment. I want to extend a big thank you to the other board members that helped put that event on, volunteered their time, and made themselves available to talk with people and tell community members about Active Claremont and what we do. So we're very much looking forward to more events in the future. In fact, we're already working on our 4th of July booth registration. Our application for Active Claremont's booth at the 4th of July celebration has been turned in, and barring any weird situations, we should be approved for that. And we'll be looking forward to seeing everybody at Claremont's big 4th of July celebration, which also has gone about 2 years without happening, thanks to our friend COVID. So lots of big things are happening, and as you guys have probably noticed on just on your end, there's a lot of events that are happening. I feel like people are making up for lost time over the past 2 years, which is excellent. It's great to kind of see our world to kind of pull up out of the nosedive that is COVID. Obviously, there are still certain things that we need to be aware of and pay attention to in terms of COVID. It has not gone away, but at least we are on the right track, shall we say. So we do have a couple of more events coming up for Active Claremont. There's going to be one in May. That's going to be our May social. There will be more information put out about that via email once the details are confirmed. So at any time, if any members have any questions about what's going on with Active Claremont, if you ever wonder how you might be able to get involved, or if you have friends that are interested in joining Active Claremont, please reach out to myself or any members of the board. You can email board@activeclaremont.org. You can email president@activeclaremont.org, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and get things started. And Stephen Llanusa is here with us, and like I said, he's the president of the CUSD School Board, and he's going to be presenting a PowerPoint with some information about CUSD, identified sites that they have for opportunity purposes, and then of course at the end we'll have a little bit of time, probably about 10 or maybe 15 minutes for some public question and answer relating to the presentation. So without any further ado, Mr. Llanusa, if you'd like to share your screen and take it away, you're more than welcome to.
Well, before I share my screen and tell you about the Claremont School District, I of course would like to tell you a little bit about me.
Excellent.
I'm a 5th grade teacher. I've been teaching for 35 years. I've been teaching 29 of them at a school in Bloomington by Fontana. It's a Title I school, which means it's mostly low socioeconomic students. It is 80% Hispanic, 15% white, 5% Black and Asian. I love teaching. Like I said, I've been doing it over 35 years. I was motivated to run for the Claremont School Board when I realized there were no parents on the school board. My husband and I have 3 foster sons that we have adopted. And when they're in the Claremont schools, I figured, well, I'm a parent and I'm a teacher. I'll be a good contribution to the school board. So far, so good. My sons are now 30 and 32-year-old twins. And I think that Glenn and I were very successful parents, but I must admit I set the bar pretty low. I only asked 3 things: out of college, out of the house, out of jail. So far, so good. I'm the longest serving school board member, the first openly gay elected school board, or excuse me, elected official in Claremont. So helped pave the way for Edgar Reese. I've been active in many parts of the Claremont community. I'm a member of Kiwanis, like Brian Bocock used to be. We still save a seat for you at lunchtime, Brian. And I've also been active in PFA, Inland Valley Repertory Theater, and other organizations. This is my first time speaking to Active Claremont. I truly appreciate you changing your usual meeting date from Thursday to Wednesday. Otherwise, I would never be able to speak to this group because your meetings just happen to be on the same evening as school board meetings. So maybe some of your members will be able to attend remotely a school board meeting tomorrow. So let me go ahead and share the screen with the presentation. This is a PowerPoint presentation that was given to the Los Angeles County Office of Education. Let's see. You see the big slide and little slide, or just the big slide?
I can see the big slide and the little slide.
All right, so let me figure out how to do it as good as possible. All right, there we go.
Perfect.
So, like I said, this was a presentation to the Los Angeles County's Committee on School Elections. It was part of the presentation given to get approval for our new by-area trustee districts, much as the city did a couple of years ago. So a little about a district. The Claremont Unified School District was established in 1982. We became a unified school district. We went K through high school in 1936. We have 10 award-winning schools, including 7 unique elementary schools, 1 large intermediate school, 1 comprehensive high school, and 1 alternative high school. And when it says award-winning, just 2 weeks ago, San Antonio High School, our continuation or alternative high school, was given an Apple Distinguished School Award. It was the only alternative high school this past year to receive that distinction. And it's the second time San Antonio has received it. So we're really proud of our schools. Our CUSD vision is that each student is recognized and valued, inspired to be a lifelong learner, and prepared to be a contributing member of our global society. That's our vision for the entire district. Our mission is to make sure that each CUSD student is equipped academically, prepared socially, and empowered to participate and thrive in a challenging, diverse world. Our current enrollment is approximately 6,700 students. That is down from last year, and that is a problem most school districts in the state of California are facing. There are always trends in demographics. There was the baby boom, and then there was the baby boom echo. We are on the tail end of the baby boom echo, and enrollment at all school districts are going down, which of course impacts our budget, impacts the number of people we can hire, the number of classes we can offer. So that will be one of our challenges in the upcoming years. As you know, we're a community on the eastern edge of LA County, 30 miles east of downtown LA, which could mean anything between 30 minutes to 75 minutes, depending on the time of day and the direction you're headed. So I hope you don't mind that I read these awards. I'm very proud of them. We have green ribbon schools, which are schools that have minimized their waste and increased their recycling. California Distinguished Schools, which is a top honor for the state of California for public schools. El Roble was a gold ribbon intermediate school. And I talked about our Apple Distinguished Schools before. We have a campaign for business and education excellence at the high school. It's in conjunction with the Baldley View ROP program. In my day, it was called SHOP or Career Education. All of our schools are involved in a positive behavioral intervention and support program. And we have gold award schools. If you're a parent of a high school or elementary school student, you would have heard it called PBIS. What that program is it's called positive behavioral, where we try to keep kids behaving by noticing when they're good rather than catching them when they're bad. And it's very effective because everyone likes to be noticed. And if students aren't noticed for being good, some of them will try to get noticed just by being bad. We have a child development program in preschool at many of our schools. The International Baccalaureate program has been present at the high school for about 12 years. We're expanding it to the middle years program. And that's a program at the middle school and at the high school, which is voluntary. Some schools are all IB schools, that's all they offer, but in Claremont, we wanted to make sure our families had choice. We also have advanced placement classes, which like IB offers challenging studies at the junior and senior level, but the AP offers the opportunity for college credit. We have an AVID program, which hopes to get students to participate in college. These are usually first-generation college-bound students. We have an elementary dual language immersion program at Mountain View Elementary School, where half the day the instruction is in English, the other half the instruction is in Spanish. So it's half and half English and Spanish, and also the enrollment in the class is half English native speakers and half Spanish native speakers. And the goal is that they enroll in kindergarten, and by the time they're in third and fourth grade, they'll be very fluent in both languages. I already bragged about San Antonio as an Apple Distinguished School. It's also a model continuation high school. There are 4 continuation high schools in the area that formed a sports league. High school students like to participate in sports, and at the continuation level, there wasn't a sports program. Claremont was instrumental in setting one up. COVID was instrumental in blowing it down. So we're still waiting to rebuild that. We have an adult school program that includes ESL classes and also GED for adults who wish to get their high school diploma. I already talked about our career technical education and our regional occupational program. Thank you for indulging me as I bragged about our amazing accomplishments. This is the current Board of Education. You might recognize some faces. Mrs. Kathy Archer is our board vice president, and Bob Fass is our clerk of the board. Kathy and Bob are the rookies on the school board. They're both elected 2 years ago, or is it maybe 3 years ago by now? I think it's still 2 years ago. Dave Niemer and Nancy Tresser Osgood have both been on the board for 3 terms, 2 terms. They kind of run together. Anyways, both of them are stepping down. So it is going to be a very new school board. Here are some of the major issues we have been facing. When the schools reopened last spring after being online for 6 months, for online for a year, we offered an independent study program called CALM. And those were for students who did not want to come back to live instruction, or whose families did not feel that their students were ready for online instruction. So we offered a program for them. It's just what we do at the Claremont School Board and Claremont School District. We serve our students by giving our families what they want. Our Board of Education meetings have been in person and hybrid for over a year now. And we're glad to welcome the City Council back to live meetings. I think they've been doing it for about a month. We're happy to trailblaze for them. Our school sites did offer testing and vaccinations twice a week. Of course, now it is, I think, just once a week because the vaccinations are pretty much done. At this point, it's boosters for older people. We have been implementing our DAC recommendations. It's our District Advisory Committee. We had a District Advisory Committee examining issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion. They've completed their work, and among the recommendations were to continue examining topics through the use of an Equity Advisory Council. And that group meets monthly and reports to the school board quarterly. Our other biggest news lately is that we now have board at-large trustee areas for the November 2022 election cycle. So I will be in that cycle, and Dave and Nancy would have been in that cycle, but since they are stepping down, there'll be at least 2 new candidates. We have involving in-person independent study model, including workforce issues like remote teaching, substitute teachers, and paraeducators. This is evolving in-person training for our staff. We also have an ebb and flow of students transitioning between in-school and in-person education. So that's about the district. We're going to talk about the districting process in terms of going to by trustee area. The process that the district followed was that we had 6 public hearings on our maps. We started off with 4 public hearings, but we added 2 more because we just weren't satisfied with the demographers' presentation or presented maps. We kept tweaking it until we got a final approved map. In our redistricting process, we followed all federal laws, making sure that there was roughly equal population in all 5 trustee areas. We followed the Federal Voting Rights Act, and we made sure there is no racial gerrymandering. So in traditional redistricting, you consider communities of interest, which in Claremont's case might have been individual schools. We had to make sure the trustee areas were compact and contiguous, that there were visible, natural, and man-made boundaries so everybody knew what district they were in. We worked to make sure we respected voters' choices, and we also had to plan for future growth. We minimized the voters shifted to districts so that they wouldn't be kept from voting. Because we're creating these districts for the first time, it's not an issue for us. I do know that was a consideration in the second iteration in some of the city council maps that they drew. And of course, we want to preserve the core of existing areas, which again, in our case, because we didn't have existing areas, was not an issue for us. These were the goals that the school board agreed to. We wanted to make sure each school attendance area would be represented by at least 2 board members. The Claremont district is a little late to the party in terms of setting up these trustee areas. Many school districts went before us, which was great because we got to see what happened. A lot of the school boards that made their areas based on school attendance boundaries ended up having a balkanized school board because, and rightly so, the elected officials were worried about their constituency. We wanted to make sure that our board constituencies would cover at least 2 board members in each school. That way, no school would think they only had 1 board member they could speak to, and no board member would feel they were beholden to one school of their own. As much as possible, we wanted to protect the Latino population from being diluted along the south and southeastern area of Claremont. And as much as possible, we wanted to protect geographic areas. So here's a list of the hearings. August 5th was our very first hearing. We had draft maps. There was also a website where people could create what they thought would be good ideas for the trustee areas, much like the city council did. We had a second hearing to discuss communities of interest and to demonstrate the mapping tools. November, we had an informational meeting to discuss date changes. In November, the mapping software was released to the public. On December 16th, we had our 3rd proposed hearing, and all of the maps that were created on the mapping software and that were received prior to December 9th were considered at the board meeting. On January 10th, maps were due from the public. We had our 4th hearing, and at that 4th hearing, we weren't satisfied with the maps. We wanted to make sure that not only was every school served by at least 2 school board members, we wanted to make sure that geographic areas like Southern Claremont, the colleges, and other areas were able to be shared equitably. At the 5th hearing, the maps were better, but we still thought there's room for improvement. So we had a final hearing on February 17th, which was the latest time we could have a meeting and get all their information together in time to give to the LA County Committee on School District Organization. You would think it'd be a fast, easy process, and it was neither. So we reviewed 13 maps. Those are the public hearings. We narrowed down maps to a final 3, and I will show you those. This was District 101. This was one of the first maps to be designed, and it was one that was kept being brought forward. What was liked by some board members about this map was that it preserved South Claremont as one voting block. The disadvantage was it had 2 schools accountable to only 1 school board member. And again, we had the goal that all schools would be represented by at least 2 school board members. So although this map was liked by some, it did not achieve our goals. Each of the maps were looked at in terms of population. And you can see area 1, 2, 3, and 4, the total people in the district, the number, and the percentages. And you see at the chart on the bottom, we are keeping track of how many schools, or excuse me, how many school board trustees represented each school. So while 5 of the schools had 2 school board members, 2 did not. So map 101 did not meet our goals. Draft 111, this one met our goals. You can see that Oakmont Elementary School was split between area 2 at the bottom and area 1 in the middle. In fact, all schools had at least 2 board members, and Sycamore Elementary School actually has 4 board members. The names of current school board members are included on the map. But as I said, Dave Niemer is not running again, and Nancy Tresser Osgood is not running again. So we didn't have to do weird boundary lines to separate Bob Fast from Nancy Tresser Osgood. We were able to develop our lines solely on what was best for the schools, not what was best for sitting school board members, which kind of blew the demographer's mind. One of the first maps they brought to us had everyone in their own district, but it looked awful. So here you see the populations again. They're all pretty close, from 53,000, excuse me, 5,300 to 6,800. And you see all the schools have 2 school board members, with the exception of Sycamore. Being in the center of Claremont, it gets split up the most. This final map is the map that did get voted on. You see Oakmont Elementary School is being shared more equitably between 2 school board members. You can see the southeast area 3. Its Latino population is better preserved than in map 111. 4 and 5 in northern Claremont are split more evenly. And Sycamore still is shared by 4 school board members. All the maps had the proposed sequence of elections, but I just wanted to bring your attention to it on this slide since this was the map that got approved. So area 1, 3, and 4 are up for elections this year. So that's the eastern part of the district, or the northeastern part of the district. Area 1 is mostly the purple area. In the middle, area 3 is southeast, and area 4, where I live, is northeast. So the Mideast and Northeast are getting their elections in the 2022 election cycle. And then area 2 and 5, which is the south and western part of Claremont, their election cycle is 2024. And here you can see the demographics. They're actually a lot more evenly balanced than map 111, going from 5,700 to 6,700. And again, you see all the schools are split between 2 school board members. Sycamore is split by 4. So this was the map we submitted to the LA County Office of Education School Districting Committee. We have not heard back from them yet. We're hoping they will say yes, just because we spent so much time and effort developing the process and coming to the conclusion about these maps. So that's the end of the presentation about the trustee area maps. I was wondering if that was of interest or if anyone had questions about that process.
And if anybody does have any questions about that portion, you can go ahead and type them into chat, and I'll be happy to read them aloud so everybody knows what the question is, and then Stephen can answer them. I'll drum up a quick question so that it'll give some people some time. So I know, Stephen, that the redistricting map was a major consideration for both City Council and also the school board. Obviously, the idea for the redistricting, as opposed to a general citywide election, was to make sure that things were, kind of fair and equal, and as you kind of alluded to, a little bit more equitable. In your opinion, Stephen, do you feel that, or do you anticipate that this will have any major changes or shakeups in the way that the school board operates now, in comparison to how it used to operate based on the old maps? Obviously, this is relatively new, right? So we don't know exactly how things will shake out. But in your opinion, do you feel that this type of districting will allow for perhaps a better or more efficient representation amongst the board for our schools in Claremont?
Well, before I look into the future, let me tell you what I've seen from the past.
Good.
Other school districts that have done the trustee areas with the hopes of increasing diversity, some got some increase, some had decrease. Some had heavily contested districts. Some had walk-in, walk-on districts where only one person ran. I think the intentions are good. I don't think that all of the good intentions are achieved.
Mm-hmm.
In Claremont, the school district, different from the city, has had a pretty good job of representation geographically and ethnically, just because we've always had committees where one person from each school would sit on it.
Mm.
So the Claremont Educational Foundation, the Central PFA, important district-wide committees have always asked for one representative from each school. So we have in our own processes built in geographic diversity, which has resulted in a lot of ethnic diversity. Not always
Sure.
matching the diversity of the population, but pretty good, I would say.
So it kind of sounds like, even though Claremont wasn't maybe required to have these types of trustee areas that have been set up, it kind of sounds like that was kind of what Claremont was doing previously, sort of had that idea of splitting things up and trying to have equal representation. And that's obviously an important thing. And it's critical to the way that we function. Obviously, we know that the negatives to, how should I put it, interestingly created voting districts can go. We saw that back in our earlier stages of our nation, where we decided that we were going to construct things in a way that wasn't fair and equitable to everyone that was there. So obviously, it's good to move in a direction that's more progressive, more fair, more equitable, and more representative of a widely diverse area, such as Claremont.
And one of the reasons the school board, and I also believe the city, went this way was there were a cadre of lawyers going up and down the state suing school districts and cities that didn't implement this plan because they felt at-large elections violated the California Voting Rights Act. Mm-hmm. There's debate whether that's true or not. There's debates whether cities of a certain size should be allowed to stay at large.
Right. And I know that was something that the city council, it's, well, if the city is below a certain population, it doesn't even make sense to have districts or trustee areas, which is kind of an interesting thought process. And I know that others have commented that as well with the city council. People have said, well, we're just a city of about 30-ish thousand. Is it even worth, going through all the hoopla to try to, redistrict and do these things? But, apparently there's a number of people out there that think that, or feel that it will be beneficial. And obviously only time will tell. because we have had, I think, one city council vote, and we haven't had any school board votes with the new district. So I guess we'll have to wait and see how it pans out.
Right. And there have been some cities or some school districts that said, we are not large, we are not a diverse community. 5 trustee areas will not affect us one way or the other. So we want to stay at large. And they have fought very expensive lawsuits to preserve their at-large elections and have, for the most part, failed. I think Santa Monica is still yet to be decided, but they have spent millions trying to preserve their at-large elections. We don't have that budget in Claremont. We would rather spend that money on our students and families. So we are just moving along so we can use our resources differently.
Makes sense. That makes sense. And just as a reminder, if anybody has any questions for Stephen as we proceed, you can go ahead and put them in the chat. I do have everybody muted, so if you're trying to speak, you're probably not going to be heard. But you can hit the chat button at the bottom center of your screen. It'll bring up a little box. You can type a message to me or everyone, and we get questions in that way. So we'll see if any more questions come in. Stephen, if you have any other points you'd like to add, you're more than welcome to do so.
Well, I do see in the chat that podcaster extraordinaire Russ Binder wants to equalize our volume. Is it more equalized now, Russ, or should I just talk quieter or just stop talking? What would you prefer?
Well, no, actually, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Okay. Joe, your mic is real loud and Steve's is real soft. If you have an adjustment to kind of make them more equal, that might be better.
Okay.
I can just use my teacher voice, and maybe that would equalize it enough.
And I will try to pull my mic a little further away. And Russ, you just let us.
There you go.
Oh, there we go. We did it just like that.
That's much better. Like I said, you were really loud, and he was kind of like at the end of the room. And I felt like we could, I hate to be picky on the technical details, but I thought, why not be a friend and suggest?
Yes, thank you, Russ. No, we appreciate your expertise. And
yeah, you sound much better already. That's perfect.
Thank you very much. It looks like we do have a question from Alexandra. Has anyone done an estimate for how many school-age children might live in Village South and possibly La Puerta development?
So our demographer did allow for growth in the models, but what we have to base them on is the 2020 census. So we anticipate there will be more students there. That's why not every district is exactly, I think the average would have been 6,200. So in areas where we think there might be more families coming in, those areas have smaller enrollment numbers. Let me see if I can bounce back to that slide. Can I go backwards? So here you see there are areas for growth in some of those trustee areas. So we can't really estimate with a crystal ball how many children will be moving into those areas, but we do know that there will be families moving into the new areas. So like I said, we've created our areas so that there is room for growth in them.
Excellent.
Go ahead.
And I have a kind of spawning off that another question. Do you feel that the current kind of drop in overall enrollment in terms of students in Claremont Unified School District, as well as other schools that you've identified, do we think that that's a trend that's going to continue? Do we think that it will increase? As you said, it kind of ebbs and flows, ups and downs. I know that just kind of the general consensus seems to be that people are having less kids and they're having them later. So what does that mean for not only CUSD, but I guess education systems in general?
It means fewer students and less money. And not only did everything you mentioned come into play, COVID has hurt school attendance as well. Even though all schools are back at in-person live instruction, some families have decided that it's still not safe, so they're keeping their students at home. Some families have decided, I don't want the hassle of getting my kids dressed every morning. I'm just going to keep my kids at home, and we're going to do the remote learning like we did before, because that's what works for me in terms of my work schedule or what my students prefer.
Hmm.
So yes, in addition to the downward trend of the population numbers, there's also a additional downward trend of families who are opting not to come back to the schools.
Mm-hmm.
They're
I see.
doing homeschooling or at-home learning, which still is helpful because they are considered students in the district where they live, but it still does reduce the number of offerings at individual schools.
I see. I see. Okay. Thank you. And looks like we have a question from Ed and Edith R. Why do we need 2 trustees per district? Isn't this overkill? Will the election for school trustees be held at the same time city council elections are held?
Um, 2 trustees per attendance area is not overkill. It's trustees are representing the same number of citizens as they would have otherwise. What it does do is give families or citizens in each attendance area 2 options of whom to speak to. So if your child is going to Condit and you've come and spoken to me and I've brushed you off or not taking your concerns seriously, you can then go to the other board member who is representing Condit. It's actually a benefit instead of being overkill, because it's the same number of trustees as the district would have had otherwise. It's the same number of constituents that the trustee would have had otherwise. It's just more schools for the trustee to keep track of. As for the question about city council elections being held at the same time as school trustees, the answer is yes. And the reason is that was a decision made by the city council. As you recall, city council elections used to be made in March. There was worry that the March primary would not count as an election date for cities and school boards. So city council changed their dates to November, same as the school board, and even the same years as the school board. They could have done it the years between school board elections, but city council did not. I keep blaming the city because we've had our elections in even numbered months in November since I can recall. The city council made their changes and changed to join us. Looking back up in the chat, there was a question from Alexandra.
Mhm.
Wait, excuse me. Oh, Jackie, does that mean if I'm in one district, I can't appeal to other board members? So if you're in one, if you mean trustee area, so it's a little confusing, the nomenclature. City council has districts. The district has trustee areas. So the word district is used by both organizations in conclusion. So Claremont is a unique school district in the fact that all 5 board members represent El Roble and the high schools, the continuation high school and the comprehensive high school. So anyone can appeal to any board member in a way that's not quite accurate for the city council. City council has a set geographic responsibility. In the school board, we are responsible to schools. And because the school district has one comprehensive high school that serves all of Claremont, one middle school that serves all of Claremont, and one alternative high school that serves all of Claremont, we are all responsible for those schools. So you can talk to anyone. I don't think there's a single board member that said, I'm sorry, you go to Vista del Valle and that's not in my trustee area. Please talk to someone else. I don't think that's going to happen in Claremont. So Jackie, I hope that answers your question. And
Excellent.
I didn't want to skip her because I saw that question earlier. And it made me realize I forgot to mention all school board members will represent the secondary schools, the middle school and the comprehensive high school and the alternative high school.
Okay, now that makes sense. And so we have a question here from Rick, and go ahead and read this so that it's documented on the recording here. So I understand that no state matching fund was applied for or used on the 40 plus modulars and high school student center. Instead, only local funding was spent, yet we are informed the enrollment has been declining. Why do we build these classrooms to replace aged and deteriorated portables? If we really had the need to build replacement classrooms, why do we not apply to the state for matching funding to build classrooms and campus completion project at high school and save millions of local bond funds?
I will answer that as best I can, but I am not Lisa Shoemaker, who is our Assistant Superintendent of Budget Services. I will try to recall what she told us at the school board level, but that was a while ago. We had to replace those buildings regardless of whether our enrollment was going up or down because they were unsafe. As you say, they were aged and deteriorated, so we had to replace them. State matching funding, I don't know if it was available or if it was a competitive process that would have pushed back our schedule of receiving the classrooms. But I know that Lisa Shoemaker is really good about making decisions that are the best financially and logistically. So local money was spent on those modulars because we had to build them. And the modulars are actually more cost effective than building classrooms on foundations. And actually, once you're inside those modulars, you can't tell the difference between them and a non-modular classroom. They have all the amenities, all the Wi-Fi, water, air conditioning, everything that a regular or non-modular classroom would have.
Okay. And I just want to remind everybody here, we have about 5 minutes or so left, 5 to 10 minutes. So anybody that has any questions, please do get them into the chat so that we can have them addressed. Rick here with another question. There was 1.5 billion available for K through 12 schools to replace older portables in schools over 50 years. So I guess that was kind of a follow-up to his previous one.
I'll try to find out, Rick, from Lisa about that. But I think we might have gotten some of that money, but I do know we also did spend local money on modulars. And Jackie, so your question sounds like it actually is about districts rather than student trustees. When you live in one district but have a student that goes in another district, the school board where your student goes represents you. And hopefully they are sensitive to you. The situation where a family may live in one district but send their students to another district is something we know very well in Claremont because we are a destination district. We have, I think, about 2,000 of our 6,700 students who come from outside our district. And those are families who do not live in Claremont, but want their students to benefit from Claremont. And it's a benefit to Claremont as well, because each district gets money for each student that attends that district. So if we did not have those inter-district transfers, we would not have the funding that comes with all of those 2,000 students. Now, in Claremont, our attitude is if this child comes to a Claremont school, they are a Claremont family. And as a board, we represent every person who attends our district. We do not necessarily look up addresses before we decide whether to respond to a family's complaint or questions.
Okay, yeah. And this is actually a really good question. I'm glad that Robin brought this up. Does the board think attendance at trade schools should be promoted just as much as a four-year degree? And I guess we could spin this off as two ways. I would like to know kind of what the board thinks as a whole on, trade schools versus a four-year degree, and then maybe what your personal thoughts are, Stephen, as a long educator and someone who's been around the schooling process. What's the board's kind of position on trade schools versus four-year degrees, and what's your position on that?
So in terms of promoting four-year degrees or promoting trade schools, I would also throw community colleges into
Mhm.
that mix. Those are all options for post-secondary education. And options are what we try to give all of our students. We don't really promote one over the other. We
Mhm.
just promote awareness of the opportunities at them. Claremont High School's graduation requirements are similar to the AG requirements for UC schools. So most of the students graduating from Claremont are automatically qualified for UC admission.
Hmm.
They don't need to go to UC. We just have them prepared so they have that as an option.
Mhm.
If they wish to go to a trade school, if they wish to go to a community college, counselors are prepared to support those students in those options as well. I mentioned Baldy View ROP, Regional Occupational Program. That is a pipeline to trade schools. Even the high school has technical and career training courses where there are a series of classes. There's an introductory class, a proficiency class, and a capstone class that could give the high school graduate a certificate in that discipline. A concrete example would be theater technical, where they start off helping with sets. I think the middle class is set construction, and the capstone class is set design, tying in math and science and architecture,
Mhm.
so that when they have finished that third capstone class, they have earned a certificate in technical theater arts.
Oh.
So even within the high school, there are trade options.
Oh, that's great to know, because that's, something that you hear about more and more is, the idea that, and can't say I don't disagree. I have, both of my parents were products of trade schools, and it was extremely valuable to them. And I know that those kind of sort of fell off in the later 80s and 90s into the early 2000s, when 4-year, schools and degrees were being emphasized heavily. So it's nice to know that trade schools are still available, they're still there, and they should be a valuable option. Same with community college. I'm a product of, I went to 4 years of community college before I went to a university, because I didn't have a lot of money and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I felt like that was a very good option for me. And I will say that it saved me from a lot of debt. And I ended up graduating from Cal Poly with a degree in international business. And if I did it all over again, I would do it the exact same way. It was a big benefit.
I, I did a gap year, but I'm so old, it was called dropping out.
Yeah, we don't call it that anymore.
So after high school, I had a gap year. I went to community college for 3 years, and then I went to UCLA for 3 years. So again, an extended college career that served me well.
Yep, me too. I think it took me about 5.5 years, maybe closer to 6, to get through college. And it worked out well. And that is one thing, as a younger person myself, I would wish that the high school population and younger would understand that it's okay to maybe take an unconventional route. And there are other options other than just saying, I'm going to go to, you know, Duke University right out of high school, because that's I feel like is a good, the prestigious place to be. So I'm glad that that's still an option, and still is promoted. Here's another good question from Jackie, and this is kind of topical to what's going on actually just this week with CUSD. What about the superintendent choice? Superintendent choice. Why Elasser? And it's okay, Jackie. We won't worry about your spelling.
All I can say is tune in to tomorrow's school board meeting. Nothing is finalized until the school board votes. So there's not much I can add other than that.
Excellent. And what time is that school board meeting?
Closed session starts at 6:30. The meeting proper starts at 7 o'clock. And the superintendent discussion, I would guess, would happen probably at least a half hour into the meeting. We have some ceremonial things to do first.
And if someone wants to watch that meeting, I know that's on Zoom and in person. Where is that? Is that taking place at the district office?
In person is at the district office at 170 East San Jose, but you could also watch from the comfort of your own home by going onto the district website and clicking on school board, and then go to the meetings link and you'll be able to watch remotely.
Excellent, very good. And a question from Brian here. Do you still have students living in Laverne? What district are they going to in Claremont?
So you can still see the map that is up there on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Claremont is almost contiguous with the city. And it's somewhat of a unique district because of that. There's a few other cities like Beverly Hills and Burbank that are city and school district similar or contiguous, or excuse me, congruent boundaries. The Claremont School District is a little different than the city. There are pockets of Pomona that we reach into down in Area 1 and Area 3. Area 4, Northern Claremont, does have some sliver of Laverne, and they are in the Claremont district, even though they are in the city of Laverne. Again, it's not a very large sliver. Very few students actually come from Laverne, but we do have a good number from Pomona.
And that reminds me, in my real estate experience, there is an interesting section kind of up in Live Oak Canyon and Webb Canyon, where it's unincorporated Laverne and it's County Claremont, and you might have a Claremont address, but you can send your kid to Laverne or Claremont. You might have a Laverne address, but you can send your kid to Laverne or Claremont. It is an interesting little area up there where you can kind of have some instances where theoretically the children could go to whichever district they prefer, right? Is that correct?
Yes. And speaking of going where you prefer, even though we have these attendance areas designated by different colors in the Claremont district, we really believe in student choice and family choice.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's room at any elementary school in Claremont and you wish to send your kid to another school in Claremont, not just the one that you live near or not the one that area you live in based on the color of the map where you live, we do allow for that. It's called an intra-district transfer. We have several families that take advantage of it. Each of our elementary schools has its own culture. I know families that go to every open house to find the school that matches their student.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I've had to remind people of that the Claremont School District is very, I've had people go, I have to live in the village because my kids really like Sycamore, or we're renting in the village and we want to buy a house now and we don't want to take our kids out of Sycamore. So we really need to find an affordable house in the village. And I tell them, well, affordable house in the village is kind of an oxymoron. And then I tell them that it is not a problem to typically levy an intra-district transfer, and chances are you're going to be able to send your kid to whatever elementary school that you want to, assuming that there's room. And this is kind of a question for my own personal kind of informational bank. Typically, when an intra-district transfer is submitted, what's the likelihood or the percentage that those intra-district transfers are approved when we're talking about elementary schools in Claremont?
I would say at least 95%.
Oh, that's good to know. That's very good to know.
With declining enrollment, probably even higher.
Interesting.
Like I said, the inter-district transfer, the students that come from outside Claremont, they help fill all the schools so we can keep all the schools open.
Mm-hmm.
And and I think almost every elementary school has inter-district transfer students. But inter-district transfer students know they can be bumped by residents.
Right.
So I know it happened at an elementary school where a family moved in, and although that school was filled, because they lived in that attendance area, they got to go to that school, and an inter-district student was bounced out.
Interesting. Very interesting note. I do see a message from Robin regarding the La Puerta property. So is there any update on the La Puerta property? Is it still up for sale? Kind of give us a kind of a quick sort of status update on what's going on with La Puerta.
La Puerta is up for sale, and as I said a couple of times, we do desperately need the money with declining enrollment. The city council has the zoning in their lane. We're hoping to see what they will do with it. There are a few people who live in the neighborhood of La Puerta who don't want anything going in. They don't want anything to block their view of the mountains. Well, when it was La Puerta School, their view was blocked already. But now that the school is torn down, they've gotten spoiled and used to the view of the mountains and don't want to give it up. So they don't want anything going into that site, which, you know, they're fighting loudly. And if we don't get to sell that property, we don't get income that our schools and students need.
I see. So, and clarify, I'm not quite as up to date on, I mean, obviously I'm aware of the La Puerta development and what's been going on, all that stuff. And so I can understand. So originally, and I know that school site has kind of been not used for some time now, gosh, 15 or 20 years, if not more than that. And so originally the building that was on that, was originally a multi-story building that blocked views, or was it originally a 1 or 2 story? I just don't know. I haven't been around that long.
My understanding was it was a, I don't know if it was multi-story, but it was a high ceiling building.
I see.
Go to any of our schools, you see they all have high ceilings.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually another middle school. It was a La Puerta Middle School. So yeah, it was a substantial property.
Interesting. And it looks like a couple more one more comment and a question from Rick. So Jackie, we were in Chaparral District 5, but went to Sycamore. My neighbors were appalled. My son graduated from Princeton, so I think Sycamore was fine for him. Thanks for intra-district transfers. I would agree, Jackie. If your son graduated from Princeton, I think probably you and Claremont Unified School District probably did just a fine job with him on that. And kind of a question here from Rick, which we sort of touched on. Are there any reasons for the drop in enrollment? And sort of some of the things we touched on are just sort of natural ebb and flow in population and birth rates. And it seems like the tendency now, especially in our area of California and more specifically Southern California, people are tending to have smaller families a little bit later in life. And so that's translating to just a lower growth in population, and therefore a lower kind of a drop in enrollment. And Stephen, please correct me if there's anything that needs to be added or corrected on that.
Well, everything you said is right. One other thing that I don't think has been mentioned is young families can't really afford to move into Claremont. Talk about how expensive moving into the villages.
Yeah.
All of Claremont is expensive. And, you know, I've got neighbors who are thrilled that their homes are worth over $1 million. But I say, yes, and if you sell it, where would you move to?
Yeah, that's a great question.
It's not money you can spend. And it's what keeps our own children from being able to live near us.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That is a good point. And especially with, again, I know firsthand, I do it every day for a living, with the rapid, and when I say rapid, we all know this, unless you've been living under a rock for the last 2 years, with the extreme rapid rise in property value, specifically in Claremont and in kind of the greater Southern California area, it certainly is becoming quite the task to try to secure, you know, a suitable living situation for a young family. It can be a very uphill battle in the current climate that we're at. So we're actually 4 minutes past our time, which is okay, because this has been some great dialogue. I feel like this has been a wonderful presentation. This has been some great information. I'm going to wrap up with just a couple comments. If anybody has any last kind of little quick questions to get in, please get those into chat before we wrap things up. Again, Stephen, I just want to thank you for your time. I know we're all very, very busy. Again, we were kind of talking about before this that people, and especially Claremont, which is a very active city, we have all sorts of committees and gatherings and all sorts of things going on, and I feel like that people are absolutely making up for lost time. And I know that, you know, we're all very busy. I really do appreciate you carving out an hour or so of your day to be with us and present this very important information. Obviously, this affects everyone in Claremont, family members, property owners. I mean, everyone. This is a big deal. And as we always say, children are our future, and we need to make sure that they're well looked after and taken care of. One more quick announcement. Jackie is reminding everyone to pay your dues. So if there are any members in the audience that have not paid your dues, please do so. And again, you can reach out to board at Claremont at activeclaremont.org. Board at activeclaremont.org. We'll be happy to tell you if you owe us money, and we'll be happy to figure out a way to collect that from you. If there's anybody in our audience that is not a member, we would really appreciate any support that we can get through new membership and dues. Active Claremont is an organization that really prides ourselves in doing things just like this, bringing important issues to give them some exposure for the public, so that the public can just be better educated on what's going on in their city, whether that's from housing to school to local politics to water to energy efficiency, all of those things. So if you are not a member of Active Claremont and you would like to be, we would love to have you. If you need more information on that, please email board@activeclaremont.com. You can also visit our website. It looks like we have one last question. I'll kind of cut it off after this one. Are the classes teacher to student ratio comparable to other school districts?
They are, especially since maximums are set by the state. So yes, they are comparable to other districts.
Excellent. Very good. That's good to know. So again, thank you everyone for attending this meeting. It's been excellent. Just as a reminder as well, we will be posting this meeting in its entirety on YouTube. That typically comes out one day after both YouTube and Zoom have to do their software thing and compile a video that's over an hour long. So we will get that up tomorrow. We'll get a recap email out to everyone. If anybody would like to share the email or presentation, you're more than welcome to do so. It will be publicly available on our YouTube channel, which is coincidentally called Active Claremont. So please check that out. Stephen, one more time, thank you so much. I know, Brian, you're going to add something because you always do. Go ahead.
Well, Jackie beat me to the punch. She put it on the chat line. So definitely have to get out there, pay your dues. I'm more than happy to go to the post office a few times a week just to pick up checks. So that's not a problem. Stephen, I would like to thank you personally. I think you're doing a great job over there. I appreciate what you guys are doing, and I do stay in touch. My biggest challenge is I've been on the Citrus College Foundation for 17 years now, and I really enjoy it. And there are a lot of students that do come through from Claremont that, you know, they're at a point where they can't make up their mind. You know, if they go to a four-year school, a lot of them fall out in the first year, and because they're not ready for a four-year school. They're there, but they want to go to something that they feel more comfortable in. So I challenge them a lot. And if you run across students like that, Stephen, have no problem getting in touch with me, because I have walked a number of students through the process to get them into register and even help them with financial aid if they need it. And we do a very good job over there. We pass out about $170,000 to $180,000 a year in scholarships, and it's a great process. So anyway, I appreciate what you do, Stephen. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. And I'll certainly help spread the word. I'm a product of community colleges myself, and I can't imagine a better way to start.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you on that front. Thank you again to everyone. I appreciate your attendance. And again, everybody's time is so valuable. And thank you for spending an hour of your evening with Active Claremont. We'll be back here again. Actually, we're going to be going to our normal meeting time next month, which will be Thursday at 7 p.m. That's going to be the third Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. And Alexandra, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we have Police Chief Aaron Fate for that meeting. Is that correct? All right. See, look, I remembered. Look at me. So we'll have Police Chief Aaron Fate, and he'll be on to kind of give us the latest on what's going on with Claremont. Obviously, our police force kind of is always in the spotlight a little bit. They have they need some extra support right now. They're a little low on staff. They have an older police department, or their actual building is a little bit older. So we're going to talk with Chief Fate about kind of the latest happenings, what's going on with the police in Claremont. And again, that will take place the third Thursday next month at 7 o'clock right here on Zoom. We'll blast an email so that everybody knows. As always, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see everybody next time. Have a good night, everyone.